sparked up really quickly. He was having a good time. She was having a good time.
You can see the dynamic had changed, and it didn't take long.
They both just walked Slim into a whole lot of responsibility.
And she said that she took all the money out of your shared bank account?
Maybe 15 cents left. I'm still here with my children, and I don't know what she's doing.
The missing persons unit did not see any signs of foul play.
What was his suggestion about what happened to her?
She had just walked out with a bag, and he didn't know where she was going.
She would not have walked away from those children.
And she was spotted in a soccer field 1,000 feet from her house.
Who saw her?
It was an off-duty police officer.
I very much believed that my friend was in danger.
The waters of San Diego Bay.
I had a friend call me and said, hey, they found a body in Liberty Station.
She had been stabbed with a sharp object, enough to cause damage to some of her bones.
Somebody stabbed her again and again and again.
I screamed, cried for days.
Whoever told me, well, at least you have some closure. I was like, yeah, but you lost hope. I think I'd rather have the hope than the closure.
She'd be on the water for 2 years and be in one piece.
Something could have interrupted or delayed the decomposition process.
Well, we ran full steam ahead at that point because now we knew we had a...
She was a mother of two, a Navy wife, and on the outside, Elizabeth Sullivan's life seemed calm, ordinary, stable. But within 2 years, that illusion shattered. What police later uncover will send chills throughout your body, and it will shake the entire city. How does a woman vanish from her own home in broad daylight and remain missing for 2 years, while her husband starts a new life, just feet from where she may have died? Tonight, we step into the unsettling case of Elizabeth Sullivan, a case buried under lies, silence, and cold, calculated moves, until the truth floated to the surface. Relax as we reveal police findings.
Welcome to The Silent Witness, where we highlight true crime news, unsolved mysteries, unfold chilling stories and events around us to educate and provide information on how we can stay proactive, informed, be security and safety conscious in our environment. The Silent Witness is your go-to destination for gripping accounts of real-life crimes, missing persons, cold cases, and unexplained events. Want to support us and appreciate our craft? Click like, comment, and hit the subscribe button now. Please note that all related materials referenced in this video were majorly sourced from either official court or police documents, reference statements, or other reputable sources, weeding out the speculation theories and unverified information.
They say that the quiet ones carry the loudest storms. Elizabeth Rick Sullivan, known simply as Liz to those who loved her, was one of those storms. But hers didn't rage with chaos or destruction. It whispered with feeling, with empathy, with depth, and like many storms, you didn't know it was coming until it was already here. Born in 1983 in Hampton, Virginia, Liz was the youngest daughter of two deeply traditional parents. Her father was quiet, a Navy man himself, disciplined, dependable, introverted. Her mother, on the other hand, was faith-centered, involved in the church, and fiercely protective of her daughters. From the outside, they looked like any other black middle-class American family, living a modest life in coastal Virginia. But inside that household, Liz was different. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trouble, but she saw everything. The way her father avoided arguments. The way her mother buried emotion in chores and scripture. By the age of 10, Liz had already begun writing down everything she felt but couldn't say out loud. Her journals would become sacred places, windows into a mind that saw the world in colors and shadows most of us miss. By high school, Liz had a reputation, not as a popular girl, but as that girl, the one you'd turn to when life went sideways, the one who kept your secrets, your shame, your sadness, and never used them against you. But she wasn't perfect. She was spontaneous, emotional, impulsive, the kind of person who could fall in love on a Tuesday and move in by Thursday. But no one doubted her heart. After graduating in 2001, Liz drifted, not aimlessly, but restlessly. She worked part-time, took community college classes here and there, lived on her own for a while. Some thought she was wasting time. But Liz was searching, for purpose, for place, for someone to understand her the way she understood others. That's when she met Matthew Sullivan. Matt wasn't the poetic type. He was structure, rules, Navy-born and Navy-bred. Originally from the Midwest, Matt had grown up in a working class, conservative home where emotions were managed, not expressed. He was now stationed at the naval base in Norfolk, Virginia, a world away from Liz's kaleidoscopic mind. And yet it worked. At first, their meeting wasn't dramatic. No grand gesture. No movie moment. Just two people crossing paths in the right place at what felt like the right time. Matt was drawn to Liz's soulfulness, her energy, the way she felt things. Liz, meanwhile, found in Matt something she'd never had: security. He had a steady income, a clear life path, a home, a plan, and she'd never really had a plan. Not for her career, not for her relationships, not for her future. So when Matt leaned in and suggested they take things seriously, she said yes. And when he got orders to relocate to San Diego and asked to come, she didn't hesitate. They married just months after meeting. And for some, that was the first red flag. Calandra, one of Liz's closest friends, later told investigators, Liz was always led by her heart. If she felt it, she followed it, whether or not it made sense. The truth is, it didn't make sense. Liz had just met Matt. She had no roots in San Diego. She was pregnant, unexpectedly, and her entire support system was 2,000 miles away. But she believed in love. She believed in the story she was writing with Matt. And maybe, just maybe, she thought this was the beginning of something she had always wanted: a stable, happy family. But fairy tales rarely survive in silence. When they arrived in San Diego, Matt settled into base life. And Liz, pregnant, alone, and emotionally stretched, began unraveling. Their first daughter was born. Matt was deployed, and Liz, now a mother and military wife, spent her days feeding, changing, rocking, and waiting for her husband to come back, waiting for someone to ask how she was doing, waiting for something, anything that felt like hers. It didn't come. And when Matt returned after months at sea, the reconnection wasn't romantic. It was awkward, distant, foreign. Liz had built a life that didn't include him. He didn't understand her world, the feedings, the meltdowns, the loneliness. Instead of growing together, they were growing apart. But she tried. She really did. They had another child, another daughter. She believed the second baby might bring them closer. Instead, it deepened the divide. You could trace the cracks in their marriage like fault lines, lines only visible when the shaking begins. By 2013, Liz was emotionally isolated. No close friends nearby. 2 small children. A husband who felt more like a roommate than a partner. She began journaling again. Her entries, later uncovered by police, painted a haunting picture of sadness, anger, and fear. She wrote of feeling watched, of Matt going through her things, of not recognizing the man she married. The walls of her home were clean, but inside those walls, something was rotting, and still she stayed. For the children, for the hope, for the illusion of family. But illusions don't last. And in just a matter of months, Elizabeth Sullivan, the vibrant, complex woman from Virginia, would vanish without a trace. Not into the arms of a stranger, not into a new life, but into silence. What do you do when love doesn't leave with the slamming of a door, but seeps out quietly, unnoticed? When Elizabeth Sullivan married Matthew, she wasn't naive. She knew the military life would be hard, deployments, distance, detachment. But what she couldn't have known was how lonely it would feel even when he was home. Their San Diego home sat in a military community, safe, structured, sterile. A place where order was prized, where routines ruled, and where no one asked too many questions. Matt fit right in. Liz did not. After their second daughter was born, Liz settled into a life she had never imagined for herself. A mother of 2 under 5. A husband frequently gone. No friends. No family. No relief. She filled the days with diapers, doctor appointments, and desperate calls to old friends back in Virginia. People who knew the old Liz. The spontaneous, artsy, opinionated Liz who laughed too loud and wore mismatched socks just because she liked how it felt. But that version of Liz was fading. Matt, on the other hand, was comfortable. He had structure. He had work. He had control. And when he returned from deployments, he expected a wife who would slide seamlessly back into his world. But Liz had changed. She had become a different woman because motherhood had changed her and loneliness had transformed her. What followed wasn't sudden. It was slow, subtle arguments, long silences, separate rooms. Matt began spending more time away. Even when he was home, he'd return from the base, have dinner, maybe play with the girls for a few minutes, then retreat to the basement, to his office, to anywhere but her. And Liz? She tried. She asked for date nights. She planned family outings. She begged for affection, physical, emotional, any kind. But each attempt was met with cold disinterest. Calandra, one of Liz's closest friends, said Liz was trying to keep the glue from cracking. But glue only works if both pieces want to be stuck together. Matt was emotionally gone. And then came the insult that became the warning sign. Without asking, without even discussing it, Matt announced that his mother, his aunt, and his mother's partner would be moving into their home, not for a visit, to live. 3 new adults in a house already bursting with tension and unspoken resentment. Liz was furious. She didn't have a relationship with Matt's family. In fact, she actively disliked them. She'd always felt judged, like they saw her as unstable, dramatic, too emotional. Now, they were moving into her home, into her space, into her daughter's daily lives. And Matt didn't ask. He simply told her. She realized something that day. She wasn't Matt's wife. She was his dependent. The tension boiled over that evening. Liz called her friend Nathan. She needed air. She needed peace. She needed out. She packed an overnight bag, got into her car, and drove to Nathan's place just to vent, just to be heard. Nathan later told investigators that Liz was shaken that night. Not just angry, scared. She talked about how Matt watched her, how he snooped through her emails, how he threatened to expose her, ruin her in court if she ever tried to take the kids. She told Nathan she was thinking about divorce. That night, she slept on Nathan's couch. It wasn't romantic. It was survival. She just needed one night to feel like a human again. The next morning, October 13th, 2014, Liz called Nathan again. But this time, she was different. Flat, blunt, distant. She said she was fine, said she had to go, said she'd call tomorrow. She didn't. Nathan immediately felt something was wrong. Liz was never short with him. Even in her darkest moods, she was expressive, detailed, warm. But this call, it felt like a performance, like someone was listening, like she was saying what she had to say. And she never called again. The next day, October 14th, Matt told Nathan he hadn't heard from Liz. He said she was probably blowing off steam, that she did this sometimes. But Nathan didn't buy it. Liz would never abandon her kids. Not for a day, not for an hour. And her car was still in the garage. Her wallet, untouched. Her phone, dead. Nathan called the San Diego Police Department. And the story officially changed from domestic tension to missing person. The next few days were a blur of contradictions. Matt cooperated. He seemed calm. Too calm. He told police Liz was erratic, that she probably left on her own, that she had done this before. But when investigators searched the house, they found nothing suspicious. No blood, no signs of struggle, no broken glass. Everything was clean, too clean, and then something caught their attention. Liz's phone had gone dark at 8:42 p.m. on October 13th. Right after that strange call with Nathan, her last known location was her home, where Matt was, and that was the last digital footprint Elizabeth Sullivan would leave behind. Marriage isn't always fairy tales and warm coffee. Sometimes it's tension, isolation, control disguised as protection. Liz tried to fix it, tried to parent through it, tried to stay for her girls. But sometimes leaving is the most dangerous decision you can make, especially when the person you're leaving doesn't intend to let you go. The silence in the Sullivan home was suffocating. October 14th, 2014, Liz was officially missing. To the outside world, it was a family tragedy in the making. A mother of two vanished from her home. A worried husband. 2 children left without answers. But behind the front door of that house in Liberty Station, something didn't sit right. When police first knocked on Matt Sullivan's door, he answered calmly. Too calmly. They asked where Liz was. He shrugged, said she'd probably taken off, that she needed space, that she'd done this before. But here's the thing, she hadn't. Liz wasn't the kind of woman to vanish without preparing the girls, without texting a friend, without even grabbing her purse or keys or car. Her car was still in the garage. Her phone was off, and her children, ages 4 and 2, were home, needing their mother. But Matt, he didn't seem alarmed. He hadn't even called the police. It was Nathan, Liz's friend, who filed the missing persons report, not her husband, because while Nathan felt the icy grip of dread tighten around him, Matt was doing something else. He was cleaning. Just one day after Liz disappeared, Matt made a purchase, a carpet cleaner. He told investigators it was because his family was coming to town, his mother, her partner, his aunt. He wanted the house presentable. Reasonable, maybe, but a second purchase followed shortly after, a large roll of industrial plastic wrap. And again, he had an explanation. He needed to pack away his mother's belongings. She had just moved in. After all, detectives noted it, filed it, but they had nothing concrete. No body, no blood, no crime scene, only gut feelings and a husband who always seemed to have a ready answer. But while Matt gave interviews about his missing wife, behind closed doors, his actions whispered a different truth. Within days of Liz's disappearance, he began quietly deleting her from his life. Photos vanished from social media. Posts were scrubbed. Messages left unanswered. Friends of Liz, people she'd known for years, were blocked. And then came the biggest betrayal. He shut off her phone. If Liz were still alive, stranded somewhere, needing help, he had just cut off her only line of contact. No woman, no mother, no partner, disoriented or not, would disappear willingly and not attempt to reach her children. So viewers, ask yourself, why disable her voice? Why erase her presence? Unless you already knew she'd never call again. Sound cue, faint static swell. A tension build that never fully resolves. Then, something chilling. Just 3 months after Liz disappeared, another woman began staying in the home. Matt claimed she was just a friend, there to help with the kids. But not long after, he changed his Facebook relationship status to in a relationship. He updated his name. He posted smiling pictures with his new partner. He moved on, and the body of his wife, still missing, still unfound, still unspoken. To the world, Matt Sullivan was grieving. He gave an exclusive interview to People magazine in November 2014, a month after Liz vanished. In the interview, he appeared devastated. "I'm running on fumes," he said. "Even if I got a phone call saying she's okay, it would put my mind at rest. But nothing." He spoke about the toll her disappearance had taken on him. Said he'd lost 25 pounds. Said he was just trying to hold it together for their daughters. The words, the posture, the eyes. To many, he looked like a man in pain. But to those who knew Liz best, he looked like a man performing. Calandra, Liz's longtime friend, didn't believe a word of it. She told Dateline that on the exact same morning the People article was published, Matt deleted all traces of Liz from his social media. And not just that, he unfriended Calandra and several of Liz's closest confidants. Why? Why purge the digital footprint of your missing wife on the day you're pleading publicly for help? Unless the public face was a mask, and underneath that mask was someone cold, calculating, dangerous.
San Diego Police, this is Melanie.
Hi. I have concerns. My wife is trying to have me, evicted or arrested from my house. and take my children away from me.
Okay.
I mean, she took my personal credit card, used it to hire a lawyer against me. I haven't been served with any papers yet, but I know she's called your department earlier this morning, and I think that's where she's headed now to try to get me detained.
And she said that she took all the money out of your shared bank account?
I just checked it. It's all gone. There's nothing. Maybe 15 cents left. I'm still here with my children, and I don't know what she's doing.
If she comes back and there's some problems, or you can call us back when she's there.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Liz's family was reeling. Her father flew to San Diego. He walked the streets with flyers. He gave interviews, begging for help. "That's my daughter," he told the news cameras, holding back tears. "And I'm bringing her home." The community rallied. Vigils were held. Volunteers searched. Police combed the area. And still, Matt stayed in the house. A house filled with unanswered questions. And possibly something else. 2 small girls slept inside those walls. Unaware of the tension, the secrets, the cold silence that had taken root in the place their mother used to sing lullabies. They asked for her. They waited at the window. They cried for bedtime hugs that never came. And Matt, he rocked them to sleep, in the same home where Liz had last been seen, in the same home that would soon reveal its darkest secret. But at that time, investigators had nothing. No confession, no body, no sign of struggle. Matt had a clean alibi, a clean house, and a clean story. But if you looked closer, it wasn't grief, it wasn't shock, it was relief. And it made you wonder, what kind of man replaces his missing wife while the world is still looking for her? What kind of father erases her number, then moves a new woman in before her perfume has even faded? What kind of home can hold that kind of secret? A home built on secrets can only stand for so long. Eventually, the walls start talking. And when they did, they told a story no one was ready to hear. It had been 693 days since Elizabeth Sullivan vanished. Almost 2 full years of questions, of silence, of a family holding on to hope with bruised knuckles, of a man, her husband, moving forward with his life like she had never existed. Then the water spoke. It was an ordinary October morning in 2016. A man out for a walk near Point Loma's FTC Park, just half a mile from Liz's old home. He noticed something in the water. At first, it looked like trash, but as he stepped closer, his stomach turned. His breath caught in his throat. It was a body, badly decomposed, bloated, tangled in debris, but still clothed, blue jeans, a sweater, and 1 brown boot. She hadn't been buried. She hadn't been far. She had been floating there, waiting. Police were called. The body was recovered. And though the face was unrecognizable, the remains were female. There were no identifying documents, no purse, no jewelry. But investigators already had a suspicion. Dental records later confirmed it. Elizabeth Sullivan had been found. After nearly 2 years of headlines, search parties, dead ends, and Matt's practiced tears, her body had surfaced. But what should have been closure only deepened the mystery, because the autopsy revealed something no one expected. Elizabeth's body hadn't been in the water for 2 years. She hadn't been dead that long. The medical examiner's report estimated she had been deceased just 1 to 2 months before her discovery, meaning someone kept her hidden, preserved her, delayed the decay, and then, at just the right moment, released her, like a secret that could no longer be contained. Police now had a body. They had a murder. Liz had been stabbed repeatedly, her jaw fractured, wounds to her chest, back, and abdomen, but there were no defensive wounds, no signs of struggle. She hadn't fought back. Why? In the garage of the Sullivan home, investigators had once noted the presence of a large deep freezer. It had seemed innocuous at the time. After all, many military families kept extra rations, frozen food, or baby formula stored long-term. But now, They began to rethink everything. What if Liz was never gone at all? What if she had been inside that house, not as a living woman, but as a stored body? The wounds on her corpse were clean. Too clean. The decomposition wasn't consistent with 2 years in the elements. Instead, it matched what one might expect from a body kept frozen for an extended period, then thawed and dumped. Forensic experts later confirmed it was medically plausible. Was she asleep, drugged, caught off guard, or had she just given up? The investigators couldn't be sure. But what they were sure was this. Elizabeth Sullivan didn't run away. She didn't vanish on her own. She was killed, and someone had hidden her for nearly 2 years. Theories began to swirl, and one, in particular, began to harden. Investigators believe Liz was murdered, likely on October 13th, 2014, the same night she made that eerie final phone call to Nathan. They theorized that Matt cleaned the scene using the carpet cleaner he bought the next day, then wrapped her in plastic, purchased shortly after, then waited for the police search to pass, waited for suspicions to fade, waited for his life to move on. Then he put her in the freezer, feet from where his daughters slept, feet from where he watched TV, ate dinner, tucked the girls into bed. He lived above her body for 2 years, and no one knew. Then in 2016, he made a move. Matt and his new girlfriend, the one who had moved in just 3 months after Liz vanished, announced they were relocating. They were leaving San Diego behind, a fresh start. And the moment they were packed, Matt disposed of Liz, not in the desert, not miles away, but in the very neighborhood where she had once walked with her babies. He'd dump her like trash, because in his mind, she was no longer a person, just evidence. But the river doesn't lie. The river gave her back. Viewers, let's pause and ask yourself this. How many times had Matt driven past that park, with Liz's body resting beneath the surface? How many times had his daughters played outside, within walking distance of their mother's floating remains? How long do you have to rehearse a lie to start believing it yourself? Because even as investigators reopened a case with fresh urgency, Matt kept insisting, I had nothing to do with it. But now, with Liz's body recovered, the rules had changed. The case was no longer speculative, no longer hypothetical. There was blood, there were wounds, there was proof, and there were timelines that didn't add up. A woman can't be missing for 2 years, yet die a few weeks before discovery, unless someone was keeping her cold. And who else, other than the man who lived in that house? Narrator, quietly enraged. Matt thought he had buried the truth in silence, in shadows, in ice. But the truth doesn't stay frozen forever. It melts, it rises, and sometimes it floats. When Elizabeth Sullivan's body was pulled from the river in 2016, police knew the case wasn't just reopened. It had been reborn. For 2 years, all they had was Matt's performance, his calm tone, his press statements, his passive explanations, his apparent grief. But now they had a body. They had a timeline. They had a mystery that finally bled. And while Elizabeth's physical remains were badly decomposed, they told a story that no alibi could explain away. A story about time. See, decomposition tells you a lot. Skin, tissue, organ decay, all act on a known clock. Forensic entomology, body temperature, weather exposure. These things can narrow the window of death to days. And the truth was this. Liz hadn't been dead for 2 years. She had been dead for less than 2 months when she was found. So where had she been? Not traveling, not hiding. She was being kept, preserved, which meant someone knew exactly where she was that entire time. Someone kept her close. Someone had her within reach. Someone was waiting. Investigators had a theory. They believed Matt Sullivan murdered his wife on the evening of October 13th, 2014, the night she made her last call to Nathan, the call where she sounded strange, unnatural, cut off. They believed she was already dying or just had. And what came after was meticulous. The next morning, Matt bought a carpet cleaner. Days later, industrial-strength plastic wrap. Perfect tools for cleanup and concealment. And just enough plausible deniability. But without a body, they'd had nothing. With Liz confirmed dead and the forensic anomaly suggesting preservation, police turned back to the place it all began, the Sullivan home. But there was a twist of fate. Just days after Liz's body had been discovered, Matt packed up and moved across the country. To Delaware. He left California behind, left behind the house, left behind the state where Liz died, and, unknowingly, left behind his biggest mistake. Because now, for the first time, police had access to the house without restriction. And this time, they came with science. Now, everything changed. The first place they went was Elizabeth's bedroom. The one Matt said he rarely entered. The one where she was last seen alive, armed with luminol, a chemical that detects even microscopic traces of blood. They began. When the blue glow lit up the bathroom sink, they kept going. The carpet outside the bedroom lit up like a crime scene. Underneath the top layer was padding soaked in blood. The flooring beneath, more blood. Even after professional cleaning, even after 2 years of foot traffic and daily life, the blood told the truth. DNA tests confirmed it. It was Elizabeth Sullivan. She died there, in that bedroom, under the same roof her daughters slept. And Matt, he had lived there, slept there, hosted guests, watched TV, cooked dinner. He had built an entire new life, above the place he murdered his wife. But that wasn't all investigators found. A year later, in 2017, investigators returned. They searched the attic, a place not examined during initial walkthroughs. And tucked under the insulation was a folded military-style knife. It had traces of both Matt and Liz's DNA. Narrator, slow, unsettling. You don't find a murder weapon by accident. This wasn't a kitchen knife. This wasn't left from packing. This was intentional, hidden, preserved, like the body had been. And now, the prosecutors had what they needed: motive, timeline, weapon, cover-up. Matt Sullivan's story was unraveling. In January 2018, 3 years after Liz vanished and over a year after her body was found, an arrest warrant was issued. Police traveled to Matt's new home in Delaware, where he was now living with his new partner and their baby. The image was surreal. A man in sweatpants, holding a toddler, opening the door to find his past waiting with handcuffs. He was extradited back to San Diego, charged with second-degree murder. And from that moment on, the mask began to crack. Matt claimed innocence. He told investigators he had nothing to do with Liz's disappearance. He pointed to her journals, her mental health struggles, her affair, and even a mysterious email that supposedly came from Liz 1 month after she vanished, sent to her lover, Stephen. Matt insisted she was alive, that she ran off, that she returned, then vanished again. But every forensic point disagreed. The blood, the cleaning purchases, the knife, the timeline, the freezer theory. Everything pointed back to him. But what about motive? Why would a man kill the mother of his children? What drove him to murder? The prosecution had an answer: control. Liz had threatened divorce. She had hired an attorney. She paid the retainer with Matt's credit card the same day she disappeared. And Matt, he called 911 twice that day. Once to say Liz was trying to get him evicted. Once to say she drained the joint bank account. He was panicked. He was spiraling. He knew his carefully constructed life was about to fall apart. And so he made a decision, a final one. It took 3 years to charge him. But the justice system had finally caught up with a man who tried to live above a body. Elizabeth had been silenced, but her blood still spoke. Her bones still remembered. Her home still told the story. The trial was about to begin, and the world would finally hear the truth.
Once you were no longer dating Elizabeth Sullivan, did you maintain any communication with her?
Yeah, there would be every now and then text or email. She would reach out when she's like feeling lonely or something like that, and I would respond. I would answer her.
And what was her demeanor, her tone like when you spoke to her?
She seemed happy.
And did you and she talk about what she was doing and what her plan was with respect to Matthew and her marriage?
She told me she was getting divorced. She said she was filing a restraint order.
We would have to end our conversations because Matt was either coming, listening. She was afraid he was coming.
Did she seem to be afraid of him?
Yes. She was going to pack her things. She met with an attorney, so far as I know. She met with an attorney, and she was trying to figure out what her rights were, what she could and couldn't do. And yes, she was going to go to a hotel. I told her to lock herself in her room or her girl's room, have a glass of wine, and we just needed to make it to morning.
What was her response to that?
She said, I had my vino, and I'm going to lock myself in my room. I then said, if you feel that seriously about it, if it doesn't get any better, call the police in San Diego.
And did she respond to that?
She said, hold on a sec. And then she said, gotta go, quietly. I didn't hear from her anymore.
And that was your last conversation with Elizabeth?
Yes.
February 21st, 2020. More than 5 years after Elizabeth Sullivan disappeared, her story finally went to trial. And inside a courtroom in San Diego, all the pieces, once scattered like shattered glass, were brought together under fluorescent lights, hard stares, and sworn testimony. The trial of Matthew Sullivan had begun. The prosecution came prepared. They had waited years, not just for evidence, but for precision. They walked the jury through every cold step. Liz's final phone call, the carpet cleaner, the plastic wrap, the blood beneath the flooring, the knife in the attic, the freezer in the garage, the DNA, the timeline, and most of all, her body, found just blocks away, in a condition that said, this wasn't a disappearance. This was a burial on ice. Their theory? Simple. Matt killed Liz on the night of October 13th, 2014, following a heated argument about her affair and her plans to divorce him. They argued that he stabbed her repeatedly, fractured her jaw, and cleaned the scene before his family arrived. Then, after the police searched and found nothing, he moved her body into the deep freezer in the garage, wrapped in plastic. And he left her there for 2 years, while he raised their children, while he moved in a new partner, while he smiled in photos and told the media he was devastated, until finally, when it was time to move across the country, he took Liz's body and dumped it in the river. And still, he thought he had won. But the courtroom had its own rhythm, its own memory, its own ability to separate performance from truth. The defense, in contrast, had a different story. They said Liz was unstable. They referenced her psychiatric history, her journals, and her short stories, one of which eerily mirrored her real-life disappearance. They said she had run away. They said she emailed her lover, Stephen, 1 month after vanishing. Proof she was alive. They said Matt wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a killer. And the most technical argument they made? Timeline. The autopsy said Liz died just 1 to 2 months before her body was found. That was in 2016. Liz had been reported missing in 2014. So, if she had truly died in 2016, Matt couldn't be guilty, right? The jury listened, and at that moment, it was a compelling argument, a case built on timing, built on shadows, built on doubt. But the prosecution was ready, and they introduced a chilling, powerful counter, the freezer theory. They brought in forensic pathologists, experts in decomposition, freezer burn, thaw patterns, tissue collapse under cold. And the question they asked, could a body kept in a deep freezer for 2 years appear to have died recently? The answer, yes. When frozen, a body's decay stops almost entirely. No insects, no bacteria, no tissue breakdown, no smell. It preserves, suspends, waits until it's released. And when it is, the process resumes exactly where it left off. That's why Liz's body appeared freshly dead, because Matt had kept her that way. And then Came the motive. They played Matt's 911 calls. The ones made just hours before Liz vanished. In one, he's breathless, panicked. Says Liz is trying to get him evicted. Accuses her of stealing his credit card. Says she's manipulating the system. In the second call, he reports their joint bank account has been cleared. What the prosecution revealed. Liz had just paid a divorce attorney, and she used Matt's money. It was the final trigger. A man who controlled everything suddenly lost control. And in that moment, he didn't just lose his temper. He ended a life. For days, the jury deliberated. The courtroom was tense. Every breath was held. Every chair creaked like a warning. Liz's family sat in silence, waiting for a verdict that would either break them or give them peace. And finally, on a cold March day in 2020, the foreperson stood. In a clear voice, we find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder. Matt showed no emotion, no outburst, no plea, just silence. The same silence he had weaponized for years. The same silence that had allowed him to raise Liz's children over the very place he killed their mother. He was sentenced to 16 years to life. Not the harshest penalty. Not death. Not life without parole. But for Liz's family, it was something more powerful. Recognition. That she had been right. That she had been believed. That her life had mattered. And the hardest truth? Liz tried to leave. She tried to survive. But in the end, she couldn't outrun the man who once promised to protect her. And her daughters? They were too young to remember their mother's laugh, her perfume, the sound of her voice at bedtime. All they have now is a name and a courtroom photo of the man who took her away. Elizabeth Sullivan was not perfect. She struggled. She made mistakes. She fell into chaos and pulled herself out again. But she was human, and that should have been enough.
Took his rubber knife, and he stabbed her. And then he stabbed her again, and again, and again, and again. He hid her body. He hid the murder weapon. Cleaned up the crime scene and hid it. This is the bank record that shows you his debit card purchase at Ace Hardware to buy that carpet cleaner.
This wasn't the first time she left without saying where she was going. It wasn't the first time she'd been gone overnight. Something only somebody who had been in that experience, on that affair, in that adventure could know. The emailer responded with the correct answer. Something only Stephen Sutton and Elizabeth Sullivan could have known. She was found about 200 yards from the park that we know that she slept in on nights when she would not be at home. Married to a Navy man who had a secret life, who had a history of behavior that was erratic, and who had a history of leaving.
It's our belief that the evidence will show the defendant killed Elizabeth by stabbing her with a knife. He then hid the body.
It's an incredible loss. They have two beautiful children. They have a long storied history, and Mr. Sullivan, as I stated in court, is a Navy veteran who's traveled the world defending freedom, and it is now going to be his chance to be served by the institutions that he defended.
The evidence will show that Elizabeth's family and her friends will report a history of finding a man, finding independence, deciding abruptly to turn the page on her life, and not necessarily sharing with everybody who would otherwise be included normally in such a decision. Her father will tell you about this pattern. Her friends will tell you about this pattern. Her friends from Virginia and her friends from San Diego. You're not going to hear one bit of evidence of Matthew Sullivan trying to secret away parts of his home. And at the end of the day, when the evidence is all put through, after several witnesses, it will not be able to divert your attention from the fact that the evidence is consistent with the life that Elizabeth Sullivan had led to that point, and that while her passing, while tragic, cannot be attributed to Matthew Sullivan.
To deliberate, they needed to decide not only whether Matthew Sullivan had killed his wife, but also if they concluded that he had, they could convict him of either first-degree or second-degree murder.
We, the jury in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Matthew Scott Sullivan, not guilty of the crime of first-degree murder.
Matt Sullivan was sentenced with 16 years imprisonment, but his defense lawyer pleaded for leniency, considering his years of service. He has served 8 years in Navy, and recent award he was honorably discharged. During the 8 years, he was awarded Global Terrorism for his dedication and commitment. He also won the Navy Good Conduct Medal and other awards.
Jury in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Matthew Scott Sullivan, not guilty of the crime of first-degree murder. We, the jury in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Matthew Scott Sullivan, guilty of the crime of second-degree murder.
The longer sentence won't make the pain go away, nor will my recanting of the sorrow I've gone through these last 6.5 years make this man feel any differently than he does now.
Matt has caused a tremendous amount of pain to me, Liz's family, and friends. There are no words to describe this pain that still sits in the pit of my heart. I pray that Matt never see or experience freedom again.
If this story moved you, speak her name. If you believe justice came too late, tell us in the comments. What warning signs were ignored? What questions still haunt you? Subscribe for more stories like this. The ones that disturb, that resonate, that demand we listen when the silence grows too loud. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's frozen. This is Silent Witness. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and never stop asking why.